Hello and welcome. Today we're going to dive into one of the most powerful and honestly heart-wrenching stories in the Quran, the story of the Prophet Noah. It's a story that really gets into unwavering faith, what happens when a whole society rejects you, and a choice that's just impossible, a choice between family and divine truth. So, let's get into it.
Right from the get-go, this is how the story begins, with this really direct and urgent statement. There's no fluff, no hidden meanings. Prophet Noah's mission, or Nūḥ as he's called in Arabic, is to be what the Quran calls a nadhir mubin, a clear warner. It's designed to be plain and simple, something nobody could possibly misunderstand.
All right, so this first part really sets the stage for everything that's about to happen. We're going to see what Noah's core message was and the immediate pushback he got.
And the message itself? It was so simple. It wasn't some complex system of laws or rituals. It was a callback to pure monotheism, or tawḥīd. He just asked his people to worship their one and only creator, and to stop making things up. And this is a theme you see again and again in these prophetic stories. Let's just get back to reason, back to the source.
So you think this simple, powerful message would be met with open arms, right? Well, not exactly. The Quran makes it very clear that the first and the most powerful opposition came from the mala, the influential leaders, the elites of his society.
And here you can see the conflict laid out perfectly. On one side, you have Noah saying, "Look, my authority comes from God." And on the other, the elites use this classic tactic to just shut him down. "You're just a man, like us." They even create this impossible standard, basically saying, well, if God really wanted to send a messenger, he would have sent an angel, not you.
In the attacks, they get really personal. They don't want to talk about the substance of his message. No, instead, they just attack him. First, he's just an ambitious guy looking for power. Then, they label him as insane, a plotter. And finally, they mock his followers, claiming only the lowest people in society would ever believe him. It's a classic pattern, right? Avoid the truth by attacking the messenger.
But Noah's response? It's so calm, so logical. He completely dismantles their accusations by just saying, "Look, I'm not looking for any worldly gain. My reward is with God alone." He puts his mission on a foundation of truth, saying he'd never invent lies about God. His integrity is his entire defense.
So after years of this back and forth, the whole story shifts in a huge way. The focus moves away from words and debate to this incredible act of physical obedience, a test of faith that's about to happen in front of everyone.
This is the real pivot point in the story. The time for talking is over. Now faith has to be shown, demonstrated, through this enormous task, an instruction that would seem completely crazy to anyone who didn't have that divine insight.
And then the command comes down. Construct the ship under our observation. I mean, this wasn't just a construction project. It was an act of worship. It was preparation for a coming disaster. And God adds this really stark warning, telling him not to plead for the wrongdoers because their fate was already sealed. Judgment was coming.
Can you just imagine the scene? Noah and his few followers building this gigantic ark miles and miles away from any major body of water. The same elites who used to argue with him now have what they think is physical proof that he's completely lost his mind. They pass by, they mock him, they ridicule him, but Noah, he just keeps working. Patient, obedient. Okay, let's just pause on this number for a second. 950 years. The Quran says this is how long Noah was among his people, calling them to faith. Just imagine the level of perseverance, to endure that kind of mockery every single day, not just for a few years or even a few decades, but for centuries. This isn't just a random detail, it's a massive statement about the whole theme of this story, unbelievable patience in the face of constant rejection.
And this brings us to the climax of the story. The flood itself is this huge, world-changing event, but the Quran zooms in on this intensely personal tragedy that happens right in the middle of it all. And through that, it reveals a universal lesson about faith and family.
So the divine decree arrives. Water starts gushing from the ground and pouring from the sky. Noah follows his instructions. He gets the believers and pairs of all the creatures onto the ark. But just as the ship starts to float, he sees his own son, standing apart from everyone, refusing to come aboard.
You can just hear the father's desperation in this plea. It's filled with love and so much urgency. He doesn't just say, "Get on the boat." He specifically says, "Be not with the disbelievers." The line between salvation and destruction is being drawn right here, in this incredibly painful family moment.
But his son just says no,
And listen to his reasoning. He says he'll save himself by climbing a mountain. He's putting all his trust in his own plan, in the physical world, instead of in the divine warning that's coming from his own father.
Noah's final reply is just this heartbreaking statement of truth. He makes it clear, no mountain, no earthly plan can save you from God's decree. The only safety is in God's mercy, the mercy that was being offered on that ark.
And with that, the conversation is over. The waves rise, and they separate father and son forever. The Quran states the outcome with this stark, simple finality that just lets the tragedy of that choice really hit you.
But the story doesn't just end with this tragedy. Instead, it shifts from Noah's personal grief to a really profound divine lesson about what family truly means.
So even after his son drowns, Noah calls out to God, saying, "My Lord, surely my son is of my family." And God's response is one of the most critical points in the entire story. He says, "O Noah, indeed, he is not of your family." Now, this isn't denying the biological connection. It's redefining family on a spiritual level. True kinship, in God's eyes, is based on righteous actions and shared faith, not blood.
What's so incredible is Noah's reaction. He doesn't argue. He doesn't protest. He immediately submits to this higher wisdom. He asks God for refuge from his own ignorance, from asking about things he doesn't understand, and he prays for forgiveness. It just shows his deep humility, choosing divine truth over his own fatherly instincts.
And so the story wraps up by making it crystal clear that this isn't just ancient history. It's revealed history, and it's being retold for a reason. It's packed with timeless lessons for every single generation that comes after.
So what are we meant to take away from all this? Well, first, that faith is a totally personal choice. Being the son of a prophet couldn't save him. Second, the story is just a masterclass in sincerity and patience against impossible odds. Third, that true family and divine justice are all about our actions and our beliefs, not our bloodline. And finally, that these stories are revealed to us as lessons, a source of guidance from the past.
And all of that leaves us with a final, really thought-provoking question. The story of Noah forces us to face one of the toughest dilemmas in life. What do you do when your deepest convictions clash with your most cherished relationships? It's a question that is just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago.